made my list of goals yet, and I still, from the one time I did participate in your group, every time I play golf, I'm thinking the ball is going in the. We talked about my golf game and how I could take it to the next level. So that's what I want to do with my business this year in 2020.
Okay, cool. So when you set that goal for your business, like what does your internal dialogue say? Like what that chatter that's in your mind, so to say, what is that saying about that goal?
It's saying, I know I can do it, and the only thing standing in the way is myself.
Right.
I don't know. I sometimes I've been better, but I know that in most other things goals that I set for myself, personal goals, say whether it's fitness, whether it's eating, whatever it may be, I have such a structure and path. And for some reason in my business over the years, it's always been like this. It's like a tree growing that needs to be pruned. But I feel like all that craziness has taken me now to where I see I need to be and go. And I have a much more in my mind focused plan. I do need to write it down and stay on the path.
Okay. So would you say that the chatter in your mind kind of supports your goals, or it kind of like pulls you back?
I guess it pulls me back in a sense that it's like it makes an excuse.
Right. Okay. So, I learned this strategy from one of my mentors, Robert Dilts, many years ago, that he modeled the strategy of Walt Disney. So Walt Disney back in the day, I think in the early 50s was when he started. I'm not sure when he started on, right before they actually made Disneyland. And, they asked him, what's your vision? And he says, well, I can't tell you exactly what it is, but it's way off in the distance and kind of sparkly. So that's pretty vague, right? But in his mind, like that had meaning for him. It was like a real big picture vision of what he was moving towards, So way off in the distance, kind of sparkly, what came from that? Disneyland, Disney World, every Disney movie that's ever been out there, every Disney character that's ever been out there, the whole attitude of Disney. Like even today, when you see a new Disney film, you can tell it's kind of a Disney film.
Right.
And the way he did that was the structure of how he created anything had 3 elements to it. So those 3 elements, and we're going to cover one of them today. Ironically, we're going to cover the 3rd element today.
Okay.
So the first element is the dreamer.
Okay.
Right. So that's kind of the way off in the distance and kind of sparkly part, right?
Right. I lost, hold on. I lost for some reason. I didn't even touch anything. I can't see you now. Hold on.
Okay.
I don't know what happened on the screen. You can hear me though, right?
Yeah. Well, I'm just going to keep talking for the continuity.
Go ahead.
While you work on that. So
yes.
So the dreamer part, way off in the distance and kind of sparkly. And the challenge for most people is that the dreamer needs to be in their own room, and the only one allowed in that room is dreamers. So Disney actually had a room at his studio, it was a pretty big room, but in that room, you were only allowed to come up with ideas. No one was allowed to say good idea, bad idea, I think you should, maybe if you, they weren't allowed to make any comments on it. They were just allowed to just come up with ideas. That's all they did in that room was come up with ideas. And every idea was great. Every idea had potential. Every idea could get shot down at some point in the future. But in that room, all you were allowed to do was come up with the ideas. As soon as you started to make any comments about it or figure out if it was practical or whatever, you had to leave the room. So in that room, the only thing that was allowed was creating and coming up with new ideas, fresh ideas. And because of that, people were able to just kind of free their mind and almost like a meditative state where ideas just flow, so it created this flow of creativity. So that's kind of the dreamer state. Then the next step would be to take all these dreams, like he'd walk in, he'd see a picture of something, he'd say, that looks cool, what is this? And someone would explain to him, well, that's going to be this ride that's kind of like a roller coaster, but it's kind of like a mountain, and it's going to be called like Magic Mountain, and he'd be like, oh, cool, right? So he'd grab that picture down and he'd go run into the other room, right? And the next room was what he called the realist, right? So the realist is that practical, like, management level kind of person who you say, okay, listen, we're thinking of doing this, right? So don't tell me if it's possible or not possible, but if it was possible, what would we need to do to make it happen, right? So they'd come in and they'd show them the picture of this mountain that's a roller coaster, that's this whole thing, and the realist would say, well, first of all, we got to figure out how much it's going to cost. Second of all, we got to figure out where we're going to put it. Third of all, we got to figure out how we're going to build it and keep it safe, and then he'd go through a list of all the criteria of what it would take to actually put it into reality if it was a practical idea. And then from there, they could come up with what the budget would be and, where they're going to get the funding from and where they're going to put it. And they could start to put that plan into action if they decided it was a viable plan. So the first step is come up with the dream. The next step is come up with the list of what it's going to take to turn that dream into reality, right? Mm-hmm. So the third aspect, which is what we're addressing today, is the critic, right?
Yes.
So, for most of us, being solopreneurs or small business owners or, even, whatever level we're out there in the workforce, it's that critic is that inner voice. It's the inner critic that's more of a detriment to us. We set a goal and then we don't do it. Why not? Right? We say, okay, I'm going to do this, this, and this. We have this vision of where it's going to take us, and we create a plan of action and all the steps that it's going to take for us to get there. And then for some reason, we just don't do it because that voice in our head is saying, yeah, you remember the last time you had that great and wonderful goal and it fell to the wayside, or you tried it and it didn't work out, or you wasted all that money, or, you said you were going to do it, but you didn't. And it just, kind of brings us down. And it's that negative self-talk that kind of, we can talk ourselves into things, but then it talks us right out of it. So like you were saying earlier, the only thing that gets in our way is ourself.
Right.
Right? But it's really that self-talk that gets in our way. It's that inner critical voice that gets in our way. And here's the thing, that a lot of people never really investigate is whose voice is that? So we never really look into, discovering whose voice is it, and where is that voice coming from in orientation to time? So is it from the past, or is it from the future, or is it from the present? So what I've discovered over the years in working with people is that, most of the time, almost all of the time, it's from the past. And the other factor is most of the time, almost all of the time, that voice that we hear as our own inner voice is really not even our voice. It's the voice of some, parent or mentor or teacher or relative or, someone that when we were much younger, we held in high regard, and some way, somehow we bought into their opinion of us, which was less than ideal. And because of that, now we have this inner critic, but it's really their voice still ringing after, 5, 10, 20, 30, 40 years later. It's still there. It's like, shut up already, leave me alone. I just want to go ahead and do this. I got this great goal. I know it's a great goal, and I got a list of everything I need to do to accomplish this goal. Like, shut up and leave me alone. It's like, how do we shut that voice off? And it's like, really what I've found is the best analogy that I can come up with is, if you had a big glass vat, and in the bottom of that vat was hot black liquid, right? And that hot black liquid represents all these negative self-talks. You can't do it. You're not good enough. You're not capable of it. No one's ever done it before. Who makes you think you're going to be the first? Remember that other time you failed, and the other time you failed, and the other time that you failed, and every single thing that's gone wrong in your entire life. It's got a list of them for some reason. That's that hot black liquid at the bottom, right? So how do we get rid of that? How do we dilute that? And it's really not so much about getting rid of it as it is actually just diluting it, because it's there, it's locked into our memory. And once something's in our memory, but we can decode it, and maybe even instead of trying to push it away, bring it out in front of us, make it bigger, and look at whose voice that really is and confront it once and for all, so that we don't have to deal with it on a day-to-day basis. And, you know, by going and listening to some sort of positive book or a positive talk, or getting a coach and having all kinds of good feedback and learning some new skills, each one of those is kind of like taking a glass of cool, clear liquid and pouring it into this vat. So eventually, as you keep pouring these, you know, good thought, good idea, good class that I took into this vat, and it fills up halfway, now that hot black liquid is diluted and it looks kind of just like murky warm water, right? And as we continue to fill that up by listening to, you know, positive talks, good books, good information, associating with the right people, going to the right seminars, taking the right classes, learning all the right skills, we just kind of stack all this good stuff on top of one another. And it's like pouring that cool, clear liquid into this vat, so that by the time the vat is full, now it's so diluted that you can't even notice that there's any of that hot black liquid in there. And when you touch it, it feels cool and it looks perfectly clear because it's totally diluted. Now, you didn't necessarily remove any of the hot black liquid, but you've added so much of the cool, clear liquid that the hot black liquid is virtually invisible. So that's really the best way to do it. And what I've found is, especially in programming our own mind, you know, the tool that I use is basically, when you program your mind, it creates certain beliefs, right? And what our beliefs do is they create an attitude, right? So we learn something, we train ourselves, we condition our mind either through meditation or through hypnosis or through just, you know, some good self-talk and awareness of the world around us. And this creates beliefs, right? So there's two types of beliefs we have. A lot of the beliefs in that hot black liquid were limiting beliefs. They held us back. But at the same time, we can overpower that with positive beliefs that are empowering beliefs. Beliefs that we can do it. Beliefs that we will succeed. Beliefs that you will make the changes in your life that you need to make, that you will be able to apply the skills, that you will succeed at your goals, right? So those beliefs create an attitude of I can and I will and I must, right? And those attitudes create a certain feeling within you. So when you have a certain attitude and you kind of get that feeling and you just like, okay, I want to go, I want to do it, I want to get out there, I want to be active in the goals, right? So what happens is those feelings determine the actions that you're taking, right? If you're feeling down on yourself and you're feeling, oh, I can't do it, then why bother? So you're not really going to take any actions. But when your attitude, and you know, it's not necessarily always a positive attitude, but it's an attitude of whatever it takes to motivate you and to believe in yourself, right? So it's a belief, but it's a belief in yourself, creates the right attitude, which creates the right feelings within you that kind of come up. And it's the state of mind that becomes a catalyst for you to take the actions, right? Now, the only thing that determines your results is the actions that you take or don't take, right? So this is a process that starts with the programming creates the beliefs create the attitudes create the feelings determine your actions, and it's those actions that you take that get you the results that you want. So, you know, my preface that I live by is that life is choice, right? So what are you choosing at any given moment? You're choosing to do something or not do something. You're choosing to do one thing or do another thing, right? So those choices are really choices as to what actions you're going to take, right? So you've got the dreamer comes up with this great idea. And then the realist creates that list of action steps that need to be taken to make that dream happen. But the critic is the one that determines how you're going to feel about that. because they can build you up or shoot you down. So one of the best ways that I've found of dealing with this inner critic is not to shut them up. It's to say, what does this inner critic want? And what I've modeled over the years, working with hundreds of people, is that inner critic, all it really wants to do is protect you. Now that's important, right? Most people want to stay protected. So what is it protecting you from? And for anyone that has kids, they know this from the point of view of a parent. You tell your kid not to do something, it's not because you don't want them to do it as much as you don't want them to fail at doing it. You're trying to protect them. You're trying to stop them from getting hurt. You're trying to stop them from, in some ways, you're stopping them from experiencing life full on and learning from their own mistakes. You're trying to teach them based upon the mistakes that you've made, but at the same time, installing limiting beliefs in them that they can't do it, where they believe anything's possible from the attitude of a kid. As an adult, sometimes we look at things as not always possible. And we're trying to shelter our kids from that hurt of trying to do something and then failing. So it's kind of a balance of protecting them, but allowing them to do trial and error and discover on their own what works for them. So that inner critic, how do we reframe that inner critic to say, okay, you want to protect me? Then give me that same input, that same feedback in a way that's going to make me realize that it's protecting me, right? So the dreamer comes up with an idea and says, okay, here's your goal for here's your goal for the year, right? That you want to achieve in your business. And here's the actions that you need to take in order to achieve that goal, right? So, but it might be leaving part of the actions out, or it might not have thought of everything. So the critical voice comes in and says, well, do you have a plan B? Do you have a way to protect yourself so that you're legally and morally and ethically on track, right? So when that inner critic asks a question, and the question is based upon the ultimate intent of protecting you, now that frame of the inner critic, it becomes critique rather than criticism. It's shaping your plan. It's not putting a kibosh on the plan. It's not stopping you or preventing you from achieving your goal. It's just trying to make sure that you have a solid plan. It's just trying to make sure that your plan will work out for you. It wants you to succeed. So we're going to end on this, and what I'm going to do is, for anyone that sends me an email along with this video, which is the setup, I'm going to create a custom hypnosis recording that will help to reframe and reshape that inner critical voice within your head. And it'll be about a 20 or 30 minute audio that you can listen to every day if you want, twice a day if you want. And what it will do is it will build that belief that you have within yourself. It will program your mind to create those empowering beliefs, which will create the right attitude for you, which will create the feelings that determine the actions that you will take and you won't take, and those actions will ultimately lead to your result. And in the next couple of weeks, we're going to do a class that's going to be more on creating a vision and aligning the realistic steps that it's going to take to fulfill that vision. So we'll get the whole Disney strategy, even though it seems like we started in reverse. In my opinion, you're not going to do anything if you don't kind of clear up that inner voice first that says don't do anything, right? So why bother bringing the dreamer into the room if the critic's just going to shoot everything down? So let's shape that critic. Let's turn it into the true intent, which is to protect you. And let's frame everything that it does as critique and kind of water down that hot black liquid and make it cooler, clearer liquid, so that when the dreamer comes in, you can truly look at it and then say, wow, this is possible. What's the first step, the second step, the next step that I need to do, the actions that I need to take to get the results. So we start with the results in mind. We come up with the actions that it takes to make that happen, and then the critic becomes our greatest ally to make sure that we have a solid plan. Okay, thank you for coming. I appreciate you, and we'll see you next week. Come back, bring friends.
Thank you very much.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.